Rebecca Walsh pressed her gloved hand against the transparent containment field and watched the purple tendrils of the plant specimen curl away from her touch. After 6 months studying the moon flora of Helios 7, she still found new surprises every day. The research station hummed quietly around her, a soft reminder that she floated in orbit around a gas giant, millions of miles from Earth. "Rebecca, you need to see this." David Price stood at the geological scanner, his face illuminated by orange light from the display. The man had spent 20 years studying rocks on different worlds, and Rebecca had never heard worry in his voice until now. She moved across the lab, her boots magnetic against the floor. Through the observation window, the massive orange sphere of Helios 7 filled half the sky, its storms swirling in patterns that scientists back home would spend decades analyzing. "What is it?" "Unknown vessel just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Big one." David pulled up the scanner data. "Military configuration. Definitely not our supply ship." Amy Okonkwo looked up from her plant samples, her dark eyes narrowed. "We're in neutral space. Nobody claims this system." The three scientists stared at the scanner as the unknown ship grew closer. Its design was angular and aggressive, nothing like the smooth curves of human vessels. Red lights pulsed along its hull like a predator's eyes in the dark. Rebecca moved to the communication console. "This is Research Station Helios 7 to approaching vessel. We are a civilian scientific mission. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Static filled the speakers for a long moment. Then a harsh voice replied in perfectly translated human language. "Human vessel, this system now belongs to the Draxen Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." David and Amy exchanged glances. Rebecca felt her heart hammering but kept her voice steady. "We have no military capability. We're just 23 researchers studying plant life. Surely there's been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding. You have 1 minute to comply." Amy rushed to a secondary console. "I'm trying to send a message to the nearest human outpost, but something's jamming our long-range communications." The alien warship moved into visual range now, and Rebecca could see weapons ports opening along its dark hull. This was really happening. After 400 years of peace between Earth and the wider galaxy, someone was pointing guns at human civilians. David's fingers flew across his console. "I'm accessing the emergency protocols. There's a backup beacon system, old tech that uses a different frequency than standard communications." "Will it reach anyone?" Rebecca asked. "It'll reach everyone who needs to hear it." David pulled up a screen showing a simple interface with a single input field. "What code do we send?" Rebecca remembered her training, the boring orientation lectures when she first joined the research service. Most of it had seemed like ancient history, protocols from a time when humanity still worried about wars and conflicts. But one code had stuck in her mind because the instructor had seemed so serious when explaining it. "TME-1, she said quietly. "Treaty marked Earth emergency." Amy looked at her. "That's for when someone attacks human civilians without provocation. Are you sure?" Through the window, the Draxen warship fired a bright red beam that struck their communication array. The entire station shuddered, and alarms began wailing. Sparks erupted from damaged consoles, and the lights flickered to emergency red. "I'm sure." Rebecca grabbed onto a support rail as the station tilted slightly from the impact. "Send it now." David's hands moved with practiced precision despite the chaos around them. He entered the code, added their coordinates, and slammed his palm on the transmission button. A pulse of blue light erupted from a small array on the station's lower hull, a backup system that most people had forgotten existed. The pulse expanded outward faster than light, carrying its simple message across the galaxy. In council chambers and military headquarters, on distant worlds and orbital stations, ancient receivers began to activate. Species that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations received a signal they had hoped never to hear again. The Draxen warship commander appeared on their main screen, his blue-scaled face twisted in what might have been a smile. His red eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Your defiance has been noted. Prepare to be boarded." Rebecca stood straight despite her fear. "You've made a terrible mistake. We sent a distress call. Help is coming." The alien laughed, a harsh sound that made her skin crawl. "Your primitive communications are blocked. No help will arrive. This region of space is now under Draxen control, and you will learn what happens to those who resist our empire." The screen went dark. Through the window, Rebecca saw smaller ships detaching from the warship, heading toward their station. Boarding craft, filled with armed soldiers coming to take them prisoner. Amy moved to stand beside her. "What do we do?" "We survive," Rebecca said, "and we trust that someone heard our message." David joined them at the window, watching the approaching craft. If the beacon worked, if the right people received it, then the Draxen just triggered something they don't understand. TMEE protocols haven't been activated in 4 centuries. "Why so long?" Amy asked. Rebecca thought about her history lessons, about the treaties signed before she was born, about agreements made between Earth and species so advanced they could reshape planets. Because 400 years ago, the galaxy's most powerful civilizations made a decision. They marked Earth and all human settlements as protected territory, not to protect us from them. She paused as the first boarding craft attached to their station with a metallic clang. To protect them from us. The airlock began cycling open. Harsh voices shouted orders in an alien language. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as armed Draxen soldiers spread through the station, rounding up terrified scientists who had come here only to study plants and rocks and the mysteries of distant worlds. But across the galaxy, in chambers of power where decisions shaped the fate of billions, ancient species were reading a simple message. 3 humans attacked. Code TMEE-1. The treaty has been violated. And somewhere between Earth and Helios 7, a single human warship received the same message. Its captain read the coordinates, looked at his crew, and gave an order that would remind the galaxy why the treaty existed in the first place. The Draxen thought they had won an easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. Ambassador Trell's 3 hearts stopped beating for exactly 2 seconds when the alert flashed across her private console. The insectoid diplomat had served the Galactic Council for 90 years, and in all that time, she had never seen this particular code appear on any screen. TMEE-1, Treaty Marked Earth Emergency. Her compound eyes focused on the coordinates. Helios 7 system, a human research station, civilian scientists, attacked without provocation. She felt her mandibles clicking together, an unconscious sign of distress that she quickly suppressed. Around the galaxy, she knew, 6 other species were receiving the same alert at this exact moment. The communication chimed. High Scholar Rem appeared on her screen, his crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Luminar's voice resonated like bells. "You've seen it too." "How long has it been?" Trell asked, though she knew the answer. 417 standard years since we last activated the treaty protocols. Rem's glow dimmed, which meant he was troubled. "I had hoped we would never need them again." Within the hour, representatives from 7 ancient species had gathered in the Council's emergency chamber. Trell looked around at faces both familiar and strange. War Chief Gorn of the Crester, his reptilian features scarred from 1,000 battles. The Mindweavers sent a collective consciousness, speaking as one. The temporal observers appeared as shifting forms, existing slightly out of phase with normal time. These were the species that had been traveling between stars when humans still thought their planet was the center of the universe. These were the civilizations that had seen empires rise and fall, had witnessed the birth and death of worlds. And 4 centuries ago, they had all agreed to one simple rule. Never provoke humanity. A young Stellar Union representative raised her hand, confused. I don't understand. Why does attacking one human station require an emergency council session? They're not even a military power. Their technology is centuries behind most of ours. Trell's mandibles clicked softly. Would you like to explain, War Chief Gorn, or shall I? The massive Crester warrior leaned forward, his claws scraping against the council table. I will tell you a story, young one. 50 years before the treaty, my people discovered a human colony ship heading toward a system we had claimed. We decided to test these newcomers, see if they would fight or flee. What happened? The young representative asked. They did neither. They talked. They negotiated. They offered to share the system, to work together. Gorn's eyes glittered with something like respect. We refused. We threatened them. And then we learned something terrifying about humans. What? Several voices asked at once. They don't have one way of thinking. Every other species we've encountered, they have cultural patterns we can predict. The Luminars always seek knowledge. The Aventine always build consensus. The Crester always value honor in combat. Humans, Gorn shook his massive head. Humans can be anything. Scientists one day, warriors the next. Peaceful for centuries, then suddenly capable of things that make our military strategists lose sleep. High Scholar Rem's form brightened, taking over the explanation. We studied them carefully after first contact. We analyzed their history, their wars, their achievements. What we found disturbed us. In a single human lifetime, they went from primitive flight to landing on their moon. In 2 lifetimes, they went from basic computers to artificial intelligence. Their rate of adaptation is unlike anything we've seen. Trell activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. They fought wars with sticks and stones, then with metal swords, then with gunpowder, then with nuclear weapons. Each time they learned. Each time they adapted. They created art and music and philosophy, but they also created weapons that could destroy their own planet. So you feared them? The young representative asked. No, Trell said firmly. We respected them. There's a difference. We created the treaty not because humans were dangerous to us, but because we didn't want to find out what they would become if they felt threatened. For 400 years, that treaty has held. Humans have been peaceful neighbors, brilliant scientists, creative artists, and valuable trading partners. War Chief Gorn stood, his voice dropping to a growl. And now the Draxen have broken the treaty. As if summoned by his words, the Draxen ambassador entered the chamber. Crix was young for a diplomat, his blue scales still bright, his confidence unshaken by the assembled ancient powers. He looked around the room with barely concealed amusement. I received your emergency summons, Crix said, his tone dismissive. But I failed to see the crisis. Commander Drask simply claimed an unclaimed system for the Empire. The humans there will be treated according to our laws for conquered peoples. Silence fell across the chamber. Trell saw several representatives exchange glances. Finally, she spoke, her voice carefully controlled. Ambassador Crix, are you aware of the Treaty of Preserved Worlds? Ancient superstition, Crix waved a clawed hand. Signed before I was born, by species too afraid to expand their territories. The Draxen Empire does not recognize 400-year-old agreements that limit our growth. High Scholar Rem's crystalline form began to pulse with light, a sign of extreme agitation. Then you don't understand what you've done. The treaty wasn't signed to limit expansion. It was signed to prevent a very specific scenario. And what scenario is that? Crix asked, still amused. War Chief Gorn answered, his voice like grinding stones. The scenario where someone attacks humans and humans remember what they're capable of. Crix laughed. You're afraid of humans. They have a few outdated warships, scattered colonies, no real military presence. What can they possibly do? Trell activated another display, this one showing footage from humanity's last major conflict, the colony wars of the early 2200s. The council chambers filled with images of human ships using tactics that made no logical sense. Human soldiers fighting with improvised weapons when their advanced gear failed. Human commanders making decisions that computer models said were impossible but somehow worked. "Watch," Trell said quietly. "Watch what humans do when they have no choice but to fight." The footage showed a human colony under siege, outnumbered 10 to 1, using the very asteroids around them as weapons. It showed ships that should have been destroyed limping back into battle with jury-rigged repairs that shouldn't have worked but did. It showed humans turning farming equipment into defensive weapons, civilian ships into military vessels, research stations into fortresses. Crix's amusement faded as he watched. This is old footage. Surely their modern military is more conventional. Their modern military barely exists, Rem said, because they haven't needed it for 400 years. But the moment they do need it, the moment someone threatens their civilians, everything changes. That beacon your commander ignored. It just activated protocols that have been dormant for centuries. Every human colony has contingency plans. Every civilian ship has hidden military specifications. Every research station has emergency weapons. Trell leaned forward. "Ambassador Crix, I will say this once. Order Commander Drask to release those scientists immediately, pay full reparations, and withdraw from the Helios 7 system. Do it now, before this escalates." "Or what?" Crix demanded. "You'll go to war over 23 human researchers." "No," Warchief Gorn said, his voice quiet and somehow more terrifying for it. "We won't, but humans will, and when they do, you'll understand why we signed the treaty." Crix looked around the chamber, saw the serious faces of species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, and felt the first touch of doubt. "I'll contact Commander Drask, but the Draxen Empire does not bow to threats." After he left, Trell activated her private channel to Earth's government. The conversation was brief. Earth's Prime Minister listened to the situation, asked 3 pointed questions, then gave a simple response that made Trell's 3 hearts sink. "We'll handle it ourselves. Thank you for the notification." Across human space, from Earth to the furthest colonies, military installations that hadn't been active in generations began powering up. Reservists received activation orders. Civilian ship captains opened sealed orders they'd been carrying for decades without knowing what was inside. Colony defense networks came online, revealing weapons systems hidden inside what looked like ordinary infrastructure. The treaty had been broken, and the galaxy was about to remember why it existed. Commander Drask paced through the research station's laboratory, his boots crunching on broken glass and scattered plant samples. The human scientists sat on the floor with their hands bound, guarded by 4 of his best soldiers. He stopped in front of the woman with dark brown hair, the one who had sent the distress call. Rebecca looked up at him without flinching. Her face was bruised where one of his soldiers had struck her, but her eyes remained steady. "You should let us go. You don't understand what you've started." Drask laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I understand perfectly. I have captured a weak human outpost with no defenses. Soon the Draxen Empire will claim this entire region of space." "The beacon got through," Rebecca said quietly. "Help is coming." "No help will arrive in time." Drask turned to his second-in-command. "How long until the fleet arrives to secure this system?" 3 days, Commander. Admiral Thexus is bringing 20 warships." Drask smiled at Rebecca. "You see, your primitive Earth cannot respond faster than that. By the time anyone arrives, this system will be fully under Draxen control." A sensor alert chimed. One of Drask's bridge officers spoke through the communication channel. "Commander, we're detecting a ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Human design. Small vessel, destroyer class." Drask's smile widened. "One ship, tell me when it's close enough to destroy." Rebecca and David exchanged glances. Amy, sitting beside them, whispered, "One destroyer against their warship. What can it do?" David's voice was so quiet only the other humans could hear. "If it's what I think it can remind them why we have the treaty." The human destroyer emerged from the blue swirl of faster-than-light travel and hung in space like a silver dart. Its name was painted on the hull in simple letters, Defiant. The ship was old, built during humanity's last conflict, but it had been maintained in perfect condition. On the bridge, Captain Raymond Foster studied the Draxen warship through his viewscreen. "Tactical assessment," Foster said calmly. Lieutenant Ross Chen worked at the weapons console, her fingers dancing across controls that most human officers hadn't used in actual combat for generations. "Their ship is 3 times our mass. Superior shields, more weapons. Computer models give us a 4% chance of victory in direct engagement." "Good thing we don't plan on direct engagement." Foster opened a communication channel. "Draxen vessel, this is Captain Raymond Foster of the Earth Navy destroyer Defiant. You are holding human civilians against their will. Release them immediately and withdraw from this system." On the station, Drask heard the transmission and laughed louder. "Captain Foster, your tiny ship is outmatched. Surrender now and I might let you live." Foster's reply was ice cold. "You have 1 minute to comply. After that, I will consider your vessel a legitimate military target and act accordingly." Drask cut the communication and ordered his ship to open fire. The Draxen warship's weapons blazed to life, sending streams of red energy toward the small human destroyer. The Defiant didn't try to outrun the weapons. Instead, it dove toward the gas giant Helios 7, using the planet's massive gravity well to bend the energy beams around it. The ship skimmed close to the planet's upper atmosphere, so close that its shields glowed from the friction, while Draxen weapons fire splashed harmlessly into the swirling clouds below. "Impossible," Drask's weapons officer reported. "They're using the planetary magnetic field to disrupt our targeting sensors." "Then switch to manual targeting," Drask roared. But the Defiant was already moving again, dancing between 2 of Helios 7's moons, using their gravity to slingshot in directions that the Draxen computers couldn't predict. The human ship's movements made no logical sense, following no standard tactical pattern. It would accelerate toward danger, then suddenly reverse. It would appear to flee, then circle back for an attack from an impossible angle. Lieutenant Chen fired the Defiant's weapons, not at the Draxen ship directly, but at the debris field surrounding the moons. Carefully aimed shots turned asteroids into clouds of high-velocity shrapnel that peppered the Draxen vessel's shields from multiple directions at once. "Their shields are dropping," Chen reported. "Not from our weapons directly, but from the cumulative damage of all those small impacts." Foster nodded. This was what human naval tactics had become during the colony wars. When you couldn't match an enemy's firepower, you changed the battlefield. You turned everything around you into a weapon. You made the enemy fight your way, not theirs. The Draxen warship tried to pursue, but every time it lined up a shot, the Defiant was somewhere else, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated chaos. The human ship wove between moon fragments, through the planet's radiation belts, across magnetic field lines that scrambled sensors. Drask watched in growing fury as his superior vessel failed to land a single solid hit. "What are they doing? This isn't proper military doctrine." His tactical officer's voice shook. "Commander, I think they're improvising. Our computer models can't predict their next move because they aren't following any logical pattern." "That's impossible. Every species follows tactical patterns." "Humans don't, sir. Look at the data. Every maneuver should be a mistake, but somehow it works. They're using environmental factors our programming doesn't account for." The Defiant suddenly emerged from behind a moon at full speed, firing every weapon it had at a single point on the Draxen ship's weakened shields. The concentrated barrage punched through, and human weapons tore into the warship's hull. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to cripple its main engines. Foster's voice came over the communication channel again, still perfectly calm. Draxen vessel, your mobility is compromised. Release the civilians now, or I will disable your life support next. On the station, Rebecca allowed herself a small smile despite her fear. I tried to warn you. Drask's face twisted with rage. He grabbed Rebecca by her uniform and lifted her off the floor. You think one ship matters. Your captain might have gotten lucky, but I still have you. I still have leverage. Do you? Rebecca met his eyes. Because that captain out there just proved something important. He proved that humans haven't forgotten how to fight. And if you hurt us, if you do anything to these scientists, you won't just face one ship. You'll face all of them. Drask raised his hand to strike her, but David spoke up. Look at your tactical display. Really look at it. Against his better judgment, Drask glanced at the monitor. His blood ran cold. The human destroyer had somehow managed to position itself between his warship and every possible escape route. More than that, it had seeded the space around them with what looked like simple communication buoys. What are those? Drask demanded. David's voice was quiet. Mines. Your sensors probably read them as harmless because they're giving off communication frequencies, but I'm guessing each one can be activated remotely to explode. That captain has you boxed in. You can't run, you can't maneuver, and if you shoot at us, he'll blow his mines and shred your ship. Rebecca spoke again, her voice steady despite Drask's grip on her uniform. This is what humans do. We adapt. We improvise. We turn everything around us into an advantage. That destroyer is probably running on equipment that's 400 years old, but its captain knows how to use it better than your ship's computers know how to counter it. Drask slowly lowered Rebecca to the floor. He looked at his soldiers, at the damaged research station, at the crippled warship showing on his tactical display. For the first time since entering this system, he felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Foster's transmission came through one more time. Commander Drask, I'm waiting for your answer. Release the civilians or see what else humans remember how to do. News of Commander Drask's defeat spread through the galactic communication networks like wildfire. Within hours, every spacefaring species knew that a single human destroyer had disabled a Draxen warship 3 times its size. Within days, the story had grown into legend, with details both true and exaggerated passing between traders at station bars and diplomats in council chambers. The Draxen Empire's response was swift and prideful. Grand Admiral Thexus assembled a fleet of 20 warships and prepared to crush what he called human arrogance. In the Imperial Palace, the Draxen High Council met to discuss the situation. One lucky victory means nothing, Admiral Thexus declared, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. We will show the galaxy that the Draxen Empire does not tolerate defiance. 20 ships will reduce human colonies to rubble. An older counselor, scarred from decades of military service, raised a clawed hand. Perhaps we should reconsider. The ancient species seem concerned about this treaty they speak of. The treaty is 400 years old, Thexus snapped. The galaxy has changed. Humans are weak, scattered across small colonies with barely any military presence. This is our opportunity to establish dominance in this region of space. The council voted. The fleet would launch within the day. On the farming colony of New Somerset, 300 light-years from Earth, Administrator Peter Brooks received an encrypted message that made his hands shake. He had lived on this colony for 15 years, watching crops grow under an alien sun, never thinking about the sealed military protocols that had been part of his administrator training. Until now. The message was simple: TMEA1 ACTIVATED. Implement defensive PROTOCOLS Sigma 7. Peter called an emergency colony meeting. 2,000 farmers and their families gathered in the central dome, confused and worried. Peter stood before them, holding a data pad with instructions he had hoped never to read. "I need to tell you something about this colony," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Something that's been hidden in plain sight for decades. New Somerset isn't just a farming settlement, it's also a defensive position." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. Peter pulled up architectural diagrams on the main screen, the colony's irrigation system highlighted in red. These water pipes, they're also conduit systems for weapons arrays. The grain silos, they contain emergency military supplies. Every civilian transport we use for hauling crops has hidden compartments with military-grade engines and shield generators. A farmer named Sarah stood up, her face pale. "You're saying our homes are secretly military installations?" "Not military, defensive." Peter displayed another diagram. 400 years ago, when the treaty was signed, human leadership made a decision. They wouldn't maintain large standing armies or aggressive fleets, but they also wouldn't leave colonies defenseless. So they built dual-purpose infrastructure. Everything serves two functions, civilian and military, and those functions only activate if someone attacks human civilians. He showed them footage of the attack on the Helios 7 research station. Showed them Rebecca Walsh's bruised face, David Price sending the emergency beacon, the Draxen soldiers terrorizing scientists who had never hurt anyone. "Someone broke the treaty," Peter said, "and now we have to respond. Not because we want to fight, but because if we don't, more humans will be attacked. The galaxy needs to remember why the treaty exists." The colonists looked at each other. These were people who had left Earth seeking peaceful lives among the stars. They grew food, raised children, built communities. But every one of them had ancestors who had survived Earth's harsh history, who had learned to adapt or die. "What do we do?" Sarah asked. Peter pulled up the activation protocols. "We defend ourselves and help other colonies do the same. The Draxen are sending 20 warships to attack human settlements. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten farmers who remember how to fight." Across human space, similar scenes played out on dozens of colonies. Mining settlements activated defensive systems hidden in their excavation equipment. Trade stations revealed weapons arrays disguised as communication dishes. Even passenger ships opened sealed compartments containing military-grade sensors and countermeasures. Admiral Thexus led his fleet toward the outer human colonies with complete confidence. His 20 warships represented the might of the Draxen Empire. Each vessel was crewed by professional soldiers, armed with the latest weapons technology, protected by powerful shields. They expected to find helpless farming colonies and scattered civilian ships. Instead, they found a coordinated defensive network that appeared out of nowhere. The first warning came when Thexus's lead ships entered the new Somerset system. His sensors detected dozens of civilian vessels suddenly changing course, moving with military precision to form a defensive perimeter. Then the grain silos on the planet's surface split open, revealing missile batteries that locked onto his ships. "Impossible," Thexus muttered. "These are farmers, not soldiers." His tactical officer studied the readings. "Sir, those civilian ships are broadcasting to each other using encrypted military channels. Their movement patterns suggest combat training, and those missiles are targeting our vulnerable points with precision that requires advanced tactical computers." Thexus ordered his fleet to attack. His ships opened fire on the civilian vessels, expecting easy victories. But the human ships didn't fight like civilians. They scattered in seemingly random directions, then converged from multiple angles, firing weapons that appeared from hidden compartments. They used asteroids for cover, turned their cargo holds into missile platforms, even vented atmosphere to create obscuring clouds that confused Draxen sensors. One farming transport, designed to haul grain, suddenly deployed a sensor-jamming field that blinded 3 Draxen warships. While they struggled to re-establish targeting locks, Two mining vessels that should have been defenseless attacked from above and below, using their industrial cutting lasers as weapons. "They're using everything as weapons," the tactical officer reported, his voice rising in pitch. "Those aren't military ships, but they're fighting like warships anyway." Sarah, the farmer who had questioned Peter Brooks, sat in the cockpit of her grain transport with her husband at her side. She had never fired a weapon in anger before, but her grandfather had served in Earth's Navy during the colony wars, and he had told her stories. Stories about humans who turned farming equipment into tanks, passenger ships into carriers, rocks into missiles. "They think we're helpless because we chose to be farmers," Sarah said, guiding her ship through a debris field with precision that surprised her. "They don't understand that we chose this life because we wanted peace, not because we couldn't fight." Her husband activated their hidden weapons systems, targeting a Draxen cruiser that was firing on the colony. Grandpa used to say that the most dangerous humans are the ones who desperately want to avoid violence, because when they finally have to fight, they remember everything. Over 3 days of running battles, Admiral Thexus lost 6 ships, not to a professional military fleet, but to farmers, miners, and traders who fought with improvised tactics and stubborn determination. They turned their knowledge of asteroid navigation into ambush strategies. They used their civilian ships' better maneuverability to offset the Draxen's superior firepower. They shared information across the defensive network in real time, adapting to every Draxen tactic within hours. On the 3rd day, Thexus received a transmission from Human Colony Command. The voice was calm and professional. "Admiral Thexus, you have attacked civilian settlements without provocation. We have defended ourselves, but this can still end. Withdraw your forces, return the Helios 7 scientists unharmed, and pay reparations for the damage you've caused." Thexus looked at his tactical display, showing 6 destroyed ships and 14 damaged ones. He looked at the colony below, still intact, still defended by farmers who had somehow become soldiers overnight. For the first time in his military career, Thexus considered retreat, but pride wouldn't let him. "The Draxen Empire does not surrender to farmers." The human voice replied, "Then you haven't learned the lesson yet. We're not just farmers, we're humans, and humans remember." The Galactic Council convened its largest emergency session in 2 centuries. Representatives from 43 species filled the vast chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of concern, fear, and confusion. The younger species demanded explanations. The older ones stayed silent, remembering. Ambassador Trell stood at the central podium, her insectoid form casting strange shadows under the chamber's lights. She waited for silence, then activated the holographic display. Ancient footage began to play, images that most of the younger species had never seen. "This is Earth 417 years ago," Trell announced. "Before first contact, before the treaty, when humans thought they were alone in the universe." The hologram showed Earth's solar system during the colony wars, a conflict between different human factions fighting over asteroid mining rights in colony territories. Ships clashed in the void, but what caught everyone's attention wasn't the fighting itself, but how the humans fought. A damaged human vessel, leaking atmosphere and clearly dying, suddenly rammed an enemy ship rather than surrender. Another ship, out of missiles, used its own cargo containers as improvised weapons, launching them at high velocity into enemy formations. Soldiers in damaged suits continued fighting in hard vacuum, using hand tools as weapons when their guns failed. "Notice their tactics," High Scholar Rem's crystalline voice echoed through the chamber. "No other species fights this way. When our ships are damaged, we retreat. When our weapons fail, we surrender. Humans improvise." The footage shifted to show a human colony under siege. The defenders had converted mining lasers into anti-ship weapons, turned their greenhouse domes into fortified positions, and used their knowledge of local asteroid patterns to predict enemy movements better than any computer. War Chief Gorn stepped forward, his massive form commanding attention. 50 years before the treaty, my people tested the humans. We thought we were the galaxy's greatest warriors. We had conquered 40 systems. Our military tradition stretched back 10,000 years. He paused, his scarred face grave. One human colony held us off for 6 months. 6 months. They had no warships, no proper military training, just civilians who refused to give up. A young Stellar Union representative stood, her voice skeptical. But that was centuries ago. Modern humans are peaceful. They're scientists and traders. They've had no major conflicts in 400 years. Exactly, Trell said softly. They chose peace. That's what makes them dangerous. They're not pacifists because they can't fight. They're peaceful because they understand the cost of war better than anyone. She activated another display. This one showing recent events. The Defiant's battle with Commander Drax's warship. The farming colonies defending themselves against Admiral Thexus. The coordinated response across human space. Watch carefully, Rem said. Every human ship is outgunned. Every colony is outnumbered. But they're winning. Why? Because they don't fight the way our tactical computers predict. They turn everything into a weapon. A farming transport becomes a missile platform. An irrigation system becomes a weapons network. They see possibilities we never consider. The Draxen representative, a different official than before since Ambassador Crix had been recalled in disgrace, spoke up. His voice was quieter than Crix's had been, more uncertain. Our empire has committed 300 warships to end this. Surely numbers matter. We will overwhelm them. Trell's compound eyes focused on him. That's exactly what you shouldn't do. Every ship you send, every attack you make, you're forcing humans to remember what they're capable of. Do you know what happens when an entire species that's been peaceful for 4 centuries suddenly has to fight for survival? She pulled up classified footage that made several representatives gasp. It showed Earth's lunar shipyards, hidden beneath the surface for generations, now active and producing vessels at an alarming rate. It showed colony defense networks linking together, creating a distributed military intelligence that spanned light years. It showed human reserve forces activating, civilians who had lived normal lives now drilling in tactics that had been preserved but never used. This is what the treaty was designed to prevent, Trell continued. Not human aggression toward us, but what humans become when they have no choice. They're not building an army to conquer. They're building one to survive, and a species fighting for survival is the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Rem projected another image, this one showing historical data. Look at human innovation during times of crisis. In their First World War, they went from basic biplanes to advanced fighter aircraft in 4 years. In their Second World War, they developed nuclear technology in less than 5 years. When pressured, when threatened, humans innovate at a rate that terrifies our analysts. But they're still primitive compared to us, the Draxen representative protested, though his voice lacked conviction now. War Chief Gorn laughed, a harsh sound. Primitive. They're 400 years behind us in technology, yes. But tell me, have your species ever fought a war where both sides had nuclear weapons and chose not to use them? Have your species ever created art and music and literature during their darkest conflicts? Humans are not primitive. They're complex in ways we barely understand. Trell activated one final display. It showed a graph of human military development over the past 400 years. The line was nearly flat, barely any growth at all. Then, 3 weeks ago, when the TMEE-1 beacon was triggered, the line suddenly spiked upward at an exponential rate. This is what happens when you attack human civilians, Trell said. You activate 4 centuries of dormant capability. Every human colony has defensive protocols. Every ship has hidden military specifications. Every civilian has basic tactical training from school. They built an entire civilization that could transform from peaceful to militant in days if necessary. A Mindweaver collective spoke, their voices harmonizing. We investigated the human concept of deterrence. They have a saying, peace through strength. They maintain the capability to fight specifically so they wouldn't have to. The treaty recognized this. We agreed to leave them alone and they agreed to remain peaceful. The Draxen broke that agreement. The Draxen representative looked around the chamber, seeing no support, only condemnation and fear. What would you have us do? Surrender. Withdraw, Trell said firmly. Immediately. Return all captured humans, pay full reparations, and pray that human leadership chooses mercy over justice. And if we don't? Rem's crystalline form pulsed with light. Then we will watch as humans remind the galaxy of something we've all forgotten. They're not the strongest species. They're not the most advanced, but they're the most adaptable. And when an adaptable species is pushed into a corner, when they fight not for conquest but for survival, they become unstoppable. The chamber fell silent as representatives processed this. On the main display, footage played of human colonies coordinating their defense, civilian ships fighting with improvised tactics, farmers and miners and scientists becoming soldiers because they had no choice. War Chief Gorn spoke one last time, his voice heavy with experience. I fought humans once. I survived only because they chose to let me survive to send a message to my people. That message was simple. We can fight, but we'd rather not. We won. We could have destroyed my entire fleet. They stopped because they wanted peace more than victory. He looked directly at the Draxen representative. You've taken that choice away from them. You've forced them to remember that they can fight. Now you have to live with the consequences. The Draxen representative stood slowly, his blue scales seeming darker somehow. I will relay the Council's recommendation to our High Command. As he left, Trell turned to the assembled species. Contact your citizens in the surrounding sectors. Begin evacuation protocols. If the Draxen continue their attacks, we need to ensure our people aren't caught in the crossfire when humans show us what 400 years of peace has been preparing them for. 5 weeks after the attack on Helios 7, two massive fleets faced each other in the space between Earth and the outer colonies. On one side, 300 Draxen warships formed a battle line that stretched across millions of kilometers. On the other, 150 human vessels waited in silence. The human fleet was a mixture of old and new. Ancient destroyers from the colony wars floated alongside modern civilian ships hastily converted for combat. Mining vessels bristled with improvised weapons. Passenger liners had been transformed into carrier craft. Even a few agricultural haulers had joined the formation, their cargo holds now containing missile racks instead of grain. Aboard the Draxen flagship Eternal Glory, Grand Admiral Nexer studied the human formation with growing unease. He had expected a professional military fleet. Instead, he saw what looked like a civilian armada that somehow moved with military precision. They're outnumbered 2 to 1, his tactical officer reported. Their ships are inferior. We should have overwhelming advantage. Nexer nodded slowly, but doubt gnawed at him. Then why haven't they fled? Why do they look so confident? Before anyone could answer, a new vessel appeared on their sensors. Not from faster-than-light travel, but simply rising from behind Earth's moon. It was massive, larger than any ship Nexer had ever seen, its hull covered in weapons arrays that made his blood run cold. What is that? Nexer demanded. Reading it now, sir. It's old, very old. Design suggests it was built 400 years ago during humanity's last war, but the weapons systems have been upgraded with modern technology. The tactical officer's voice shook. Sir, that single ship has enough firepower to destroy half our fleet. A communication channel opened. Ambassador Trell appeared on the screen, her insected features neutral. Behind her stood Admiral Patricia Woods of the Earth Navy, an older woman with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen things Nexer could only imagine. Grand Admiral Nexer, Trell began, I am here to mediate a peaceful resolution to this crisis. Earth has agreed to negotiate if the Draxen Empire meets their terms. Nexer forced confidence into his voice. The Draxen Empire does not negotiate from a position of weakness. We have 300 warships. They have barely half that number. Admiral Woods spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but carrying weight. You're counting wrong, Admiral. You have 300 ships. We have every human in this fleet who's willing to die to protect their families. There's a difference. Nexer bristled at her tone. Brave words from someone who's outnumbered. Woods smiled slightly. Let me show you something. She gestured to her tactical officer, and data began streaming to Nexer's displays. It showed human positions throughout the galaxy, not just in this system but everywhere. We have research stations near every major trade route, Woods explained. Colony settlements in strategic locations, mining operations near key resource systems, trade outposts in neutral zones. For 400 years, we've been peaceful neighbors, contributing to galactic science and commerce. She paused. But we've also been preparing, just in case someone like you decided peace wasn't enough. The display zoomed out, showing the entire region of space. Every human settlement, every station, every ship was highlighted. And around each one, defensive networks appeared, hidden weapons arrays, converted civilian vessels, reserve forces standing ready. If you attack us here, you win this battle, Woods said calmly. Your 300 ships will probably destroy our fleet. But then what? Every human colony becomes a fortress. Every human ship becomes a weapon. Every human civilian becomes a soldier. We'll fight you in asteroid belts and gas giants. We'll sabotage your supply lines. We'll turn every system into a battleground where our inferior technology doesn't matter because we know how to use terrain, psychology, and desperation. Nexer stared at the display, understanding dawning. You'd turn this into a guerrilla war across the entire galaxy. We'd turn it into survival, Woods corrected. And humans are very good at surviving. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us with weather, predators, diseases, and natural disasters. We survived ice ages and droughts. We survived wars with ourselves. We survived when we had nothing but rocks and sticks. What makes you think advanced technology will stop us now? Trell spoke again. Grand Admiral, the Council is prepared to offer a peaceful solution. The Draxen Empire withdraws all forces, returns the Helios 7 scientists unharmed, pays reparations for the damage caused, and issues a formal apology. In return, Earth agrees not to pursue further action, and the Treaty of Preserved Worlds is reaffirmed by all parties. And if we refuse? Nexer asked, though he already knew the answer. Woods leaned forward slightly. Then we fight, and you'll win the battles but lose the war, because every human you kill will make the survivors more determined. Every colony you destroy will teach the others new defensive tactics. Every victory you achieve will cost you more than the last. Eventually, you'll realize that conquering humans isn't worth the price. But by then, the damage will be done to both our peoples. Nexer looked at his tactical displays again. 300 warships against 150. On paper, an easy victory. But he thought about Commander Drask's defeat by a single destroyer. He thought about Admiral Thexus losing 6 ships to farmers. He thought about the massive dreadnought hidden behind Earth's moon, waiting silently like a promise of destruction. What guarantee do we have that humans won't seek revenge later? Nexer asked. Trell answered. The same guarantee that's existed for 400 years. Humans don't want war. They never did. They want to study plants on distant moons, grow crops on colony worlds, trade goods between stars, and raise their children in peace. The treaty recognized this. It wasn't written to protect humans from us. It was written to protect everyone from the tragedy of forcing humans to fight. Woods added, "We'll accept your apology and reparations. We'll go back to our research and farming and trading. But we'll also remember. And the next time someone thinks about attacking human civilians, they'll remember too. They'll remember that we could have fought you here and didn't, because we chose peace over victory. That choice should terrify your empire more than any battle would." Nexer sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. 300 ships waited to attack, but he thought about the look in Admiral Woods's eyes, calm and sad and absolutely certain. She didn't want to fight, but she would. And somehow, that made her more dangerous than any warrior Nexer had ever faced. "What about the scientists?" Nexer asked finally. "The ones Commander Drask captured." A new channel opened. Rebecca Walsh appeared on screen, standing in the restored research station at Helios 7. Her bruises had healed, but her eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there before. "We're safe. Captain Foster's Marines extracted us. We're back to studying plants, like we were before your commander decided to attack people who never threatened anyone." Nexer saw the future clearly now. He could attack and probably win this battle. But then he'd face years of fighting against an enemy that turned farmers into soldiers, mining equipment into weapons, and peaceful colonies into fortresses. An enemy that fought not for glory or conquest, but for survival. An enemy that would never surrender because surrender meant extinction. Or he could accept the Council's terms, return home, and report that the Draxen Empire had learned the same lesson other species learned centuries ago. "Admiral Woods," Nexer said slowly, "the Draxen Empire accepts the Council's terms. We will withdraw immediately, pay the required reparations, and issue a formal apology. Commander Drask will face military tribunal for his actions." Woods nodded, showing no triumph or satisfaction. "Thank you, Admiral, for choosing wisely." 3 days later, the Draxen fleet left the system. The human vessels dispersed, returning to their normal duties as if they had always been civilian ships. The massive dreadnought behind Earth's moon powered down its weapons and sank back into its hidden berth, waiting for a day that would hopefully never come. On the research station at Helios 7, Rebecca Walsh examined a new plant specimen while David and Amy worked nearby. Through the observation window, a single Earth Navy destroyer maintained permanent station. Captain Foster had volunteered his ship to remain as protection, a quiet reminder of what could happen if the galaxy forgot again. "Do you think it's really over?" Amy asked, not looking up from her samples. Rebecca thought about Admiral Woods's calm certainty, about farmers who became soldiers, about a civilization that could transform from peaceful to militant in weeks, but chose not to. "It's over because we showed them we could fight but chose not to. That's more powerful than any victory would have been." David smiled slightly. "So we're back to being scientists studying plants on a moon nobody cared about." "Yes," Rebecca said, pressing her hand against the containment field and watching the purple tendrils curl away. "And the galaxy will remember why they should leave scientists alone." Ambassador Trell submitted her final report to the Galactic Council. In it, she wrote, "The Treaty of Preserved Worlds has been tested and reaffirmed. Humans remain our most valuable partners in peace and our most dangerous potential enemies in war. The Draxen learned what we all learned centuries ago. The most terrifying warriors are those who desperately want to avoid violence, because when they finally have no choice, they fight with the skill of experience and the desperation of survival. Earth remains marked as protected territory, not to save humans from us, but to save us all from the tragedy of forcing humans to remember what they're capable of." The treaty held, peace continued, and across the galaxy, species both old and young whispered the new lesson: never trigger treaty marked Earth emergency. Because when you do, you discover that the gentle farmers and scientists and traders are also the descendants of a species that survived everything their deadly planet threw at them. And survival is the most dangerous skill in the universe.